How do you start a company in China 2019 and probably 2020 as well? Let's find out. Hi, my name is magnus.dettmar. I live and work here in Shanghai, China. I do a lot of video about how it is to do business, travel around in China. And today I wanted to do a video that you guys have been asking for a lot. Both on my Instagram, on LinkedIn, I've got emails. I got so many questions regarding the last video I did, how to start a company in China. But I feel I need to update that a little bit because I was very new in China by that time. Now I'm way more experienced, and that's why I wanted to tell you how I have experienced how it is to start a company, what you should do, what you not should do, etc. So don't you worry, Magnus got your back. But in order to make this a little bit more corporate, a little bit more serious, but I think we need to spice it up just a little bit more. Now I got the suit on, I got the tie on, now I feel way more corporate, and of course I'll bring you way more trust when I have this type of outfit on, right? I'm making this video because I wanted to help you on this journey, because China has so many opportunities, but you feel so uncertain when you're getting here for the very first time. I have worked as an auditor before. I worked as a management consultant for a big company called Deloitte. So even though I have that experience, when I got here, I felt like a total rookie. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where to go, who to talk to. And since everything is in Chinese and you can't Google yourself into finding out stuff here, it's really, really difficult. But don't you worry, Magnus got your back. So let's go. One thing before we roll this video, I wanted to mention that I have two alternatives for you when it comes to starting a company, and I will mention them in the end of the video, so keep on watching. Anyways, what I wanted to say is that today it's way easier to start a company than it was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago you had to have so many type of papers, you have to be here for a certain amount of time, you have to, it takes basically a year to start a company, but now you can do it in basically 6 weeks. Another thing that I also wanted to mention is the first people that reach out to you, don't trust them. There's a lot of agents here that just want to take your money and scam you, so be very careful with that. The third thing I also wanted to mention is that I know how to start a company in Shanghai, and in a Shanghai company you can basically operate from anywhere in China, what I know of. However, if you want to start a company in Beijing, if you want to start a company in basically any other city, I have not done that, so I can't help you with that, but start a company in Shanghai, it's very smooth process these days if you know what you're doing. So the first thing that you have to hand in is of course your passport. Majority of the agencies here only need a copy of your passport in colors, just to be very clear, but you have to send in a copy of your passport, and usually they have some time limit. It can't be expired within like 2 years, something like that, so check that you have a new passport so you don't have to update that during the process. So the second thing you have to do is to register a capital, and this is where a lot of foreigners get really confused, because the registered capital is just an estimate of how much expenses you will have from your company in the coming 3 years. This is an amount that you think that, okay, my company will be in this size, maybe I'll put in, I don't know, 1 million RMB as a registered capital. And what will happen with that amount is it will be that number that you put on your business license that each and every company here in China has, both foreign companies and also the Chinese companies. You can see that sometimes in different type of restaurants where they have the business license hanging on the wall. It's according to law that you have to show that to your customers. So that's something that you will also get when you have registered a company here. And once again, that amount that you put in, you don't have to have in your bank account. It's just a registered capital in order to make it an estimate. This is how big the company is. If you're a freelancer, if you're a solo entrepreneur, then the capital will probably be lower compared to if you're coming in as the next Starbucks or something like that, and it will be way bigger. Do you get it? Yeah, okay, let's move on to the next one. The third thing that you have to consider is your business scope. And what that means is that, okay, are you gonna start a restaurant? Are you gonna start a consultancy firm? Are you gonna do import-export? What are you gonna do with your company? So that you should have a small paragraph about the description about what you're gonna do. You don't have to put like 10 pages, something like that. Just a very simple explanation on what you're gonna do, so the authorities know that, okay, you're in this sector or in that sector. Like for my company, I do marketing and business consultancy, and I can legally not make, I don't know, start a restaurant or something like that on the business license that I have right now. So consider that. If you know exactly what you're doing, put it more specific. If you want to maybe broaden your business scope, then do it a little bit more broad. Duh. The fourth thing is the investor's company's business license. And this is basically if you have a company abroad and you want to register this as a subsidiary, a daughter company, something like that, then you have to put like the company that actually own this company. Then it's a totally different deal. If you're just coming here as a freelancer and you don't have a company back home, don't you worry about this. This is a step that you don't need. And what I also wanted to mention regarding that is if you're gonna open a company through your own company, yeah, then you have to do a little bit more paperwork. You have to actually go to the embassy in your country. You have to make a copy of the business license that you have. Then they have to put a chop on it and say that, okay, this is a copy of the original. They prove that it's actually a real one, and then you have to send that. It's a little bit more tricky, but it's absolutely doable if you want to do that. The fifth thing that you have to put in is, of course, all the shareholders in your company. If you're just a sole entrepreneur, you don't have to consider this, but of course if you are a lot of investors, a lot of different people that are going to be shareholder in this company, every single person's passport copy have to be sent to China or to the agent. The sixth thing is the company registered name, and this step is a little bit difficult because every Chinese company here has to have a Chinese name, and you cannot put like your last name or something like that. It has to be in Chinese character. So even like Starbucks have a Chinese name here. And when you're picking a name for your company here, first of all, it cannot sound like any of the other companies that are registered here, and of course the characters cannot be the same as any of the other companies that are registered in China. And in China, it's millions of companies started every year, so this step is a little bit tiring. However, it's not impossible. What you have to do is you have to contact someone that speaks Chinese or talk to an agency that help you with this type of stuff. And what you do is you put up maybe 10, maybe 15 different type of names that you feel, okay, I feel comfortable with my company is called this. Of course, your brand can be called something totally different. Your brand doesn't have to be called that. It's same like most of the big companies, they have one company name and then they have brand names. But the company name, you have to find that is unique. I can tell you when I registered my company here, it took about 15 or 20 different type of names, and I had to completely change the name that I thought about from the beginning. But the name doesn't really matter because of course you have the brand in the end, so that's just a formality. You know how it is when you have started a company in another country. It's similar to that. Do you get me? Yeah, okay, let's jump into the next one. The seventh step is that you have to have a supervisor as well. And for single entrepreneurs, this is kind of difficult because the one that you registered the business on and the supervisor have to be two different type of people. You can be in the same family, it can be your brother, sister, mother, whatever. It can be a friend, something like that. It can be a Chinese person if you want that as well. But you have to have two people that are registered on this company, one as an owner and one as a supervisor. This also have to be original copies of your passport. And the eighth step is that you have to have an accountant, and it has to be a registered Chinese accountant. Even though I worked as an auditor, even though I worked in accounting, I've had a company that I did accounting for other firms, I cannot legally do the accounting for my own company here. You have to have a registered Chinese accountant in order to make your bookkeeping go smoothly. And usually these accountants do all the tax reporting, everything like that, and that's something that I would recommend you to outsource because it's kind of difficult. You can find an accountant within these agencies. Usually they provide that type of service. It's not that expensive. If you basically have no invoices or 1 or 2 a month, maybe you can land on something like, I don't know, 1,000 RMB for an accountant per month. And the accountant has to be registered for 1 year in the beginning. Then you can start to change accountant, but the first year you have to have the same accountant, just as a reminder. And the last thing is that you have to fill in the company application form, and this is super duper simple. It will take you like a couple of hours to fill it in. It's very, very easy. So these are the different type of steps that you have to do when you want to start a company in China, and it might sound overwhelming, but actually it's kind of easy when you just get into it. I know you feel a little bit uncertain the first time, but after some time you get used to it. Jesus, that was a lot of talking. Do you learn anything from this, or is it just like a lot of babbling from a Swedish guy in a suit on a Saturday morning? Yeah, that's what I'm doing for you guys. I'm here in my office at a Saturday morning. Good coffee though. Okay, now I feel way more energized, okay? What I wanted to tell you is to answer a little bit of the frequently asked questions that I get when when you reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on my email, whatever. I will also mention in a few minutes which 2 alternatives you have when it comes to starting a company here in Shanghai. The first thing that you always ask me is that, do you have to have an office when you're registering a company here in China? And yes, but with modification. When you're starting a company here, yes, you have to register your company at an address, but this can be a post box, this can be somewhere where the agency actually provide you with this type of service. So you don't actually have to rent a big office here that costs you a lot of money and doesn't give you anything if you want to do most of the work from abroad. You can actually just register a post box, and then you can have your, I don't know, address wherever you want it to be. So that's something I want to be very, very clear. Another thing that I also ask, can you start a company from abroad? And this varies between the different type of district here in Shanghai. Some of them actually you have to come here, be present, register with your passport. Some of them you can do from abroad. So it depends on which firm you are choosing. What you have to consider though is that the accountant has to be present here in China when you register a company. Are there any hidden like service fees when starting a company that like 3 years in that I will just get bankrupt? No. Actually, when you're starting a company here, it's more transparent than you would think. When you get here, you will find all the expenses. Like, yeah, I told you the accounting cost about 1,000 RMB per month, and there's no really other expenses. Yeah, you have to pay taxes, you have to do all that. If you want to register an actual office here, yeah, of course, that adds up. But there's no more like hidden fees that 3 years down the road that you will be totally bankrupt, just so you know. So if I want to send an invoice, Magnus, how do I do? Very good question, because here in China they have something called Fapiao. And Fapiao is an invoice that's actually serviced by the tax authorities. So tax authorities actually provide you with a piece of paper where you put in the amount, they choose what type of tax you should have depending on which type of big company, small company, what type of services of course you're providing. So this type of invoices you have to get, you have to collect. You cannot do as we do like in the West, where you just like, okay, put in an Excel sheet that, oh, I want to send this amount and this amount of VAT. No, you actually have to have an official Fapiao when you're sending that out to your clients or whoever are buying your type of services or goods. Let me know in the comments if you want to know more about Fapiao. Magnus, I've heard that in China you don't sign stuff, you use chops in order to like sign stuff. And yes, that's correct. For each and every company that's in China, you basically have to have 3 chops. You can have more for different type of services, but you have to have at least 3. The first one is of course the company chop. And this one you use when you're like, I don't know, signing documents, signing different type of legal binding type of documents. Then you have to have that and you press that stamp on all the different type of sheets within the contract. The second thing that you have to have is of course your personally chop. This is an engraved one with your names. So when you put that on a paper, it's actually like signing. They don't trust when you just sign it by your hand. You actually have to have a name chop as well. The third thing that every company has is a tax chop or a fapiao chop, as I wanted to call them. So when you're sending out different type of fapiaos, when you're sending out the Chinese invoices, then you have to use that chop on each and every type of fapiao. This is because they wanted to make a little bit more certain that this fapiao has been sent from that person. That's why you have that type of chop as well. And the agencies help you with finding these type of chops, so don't you worry about that. But 3 of these chops you really need when you have a company here in China. Don't lose them. If you lose them, it's a nightmare, I can tell you that. I've heard people that lost them. It's just don't. Just keep them in the safe where you have the code and never leave them out of your sight, okay? How much tax do you pay in China? And I'm not a tax lawyer. I work for Deloitte. I can help you with this type of stuff, but then you have to freaking pay me. I'll put a fundraising site below. Taxes are really difficult. What I can give you a rough estimate is that when I have a small company, I send out my type of goods or services, I get about like 3% VAT. My income tax is about 10%, but don't take this as legal advice. This is a very rough estimate, but what I just wanted to say is that coming from Sweden, where we have one of the highest taxes in the world, it's way better here than back home. You would think it's higher, but it's actually quite low here in China. So now I know what you're waiting for. In the end of the video, I wanted to tell you 2 alternatives how you can start a company in China. And I have those alternatives for you. And if you want any of these alternatives, comment below, send me an email, go into my LinkedIn and ask me for this, because I want to help you. I know how difficult it is when you're getting here for the absolutely first time. So the first alternative takes longer time. It takes about 6 weeks to start a company here, but it's way cheaper than the other alternative. The thing with this is that as it is now, things are changing very quickly here in China, but as it is now, you don't actually have to be in China to register it when you're doing the 6-week one. You can actually just do everything from abroad, and I can help you doing that if you want that, no problem. The second thing though is you can start it within 10 days. This is a little bit more expensive. You actually have to be in China to do it then. You cannot just do every paperwork from wherever you are coming from. You actually have to be in China to do it. But 10 days is a very quick way to do it. Just so you know, there's 2 alternatives. One that takes 6 weeks and you can do it from abroad. One that actually takes 10 days, but you have to be present in China and it's a little bit more expensive. Oh Jesus, that was a difficult video to do. Hope you have learned something. Do you like this type of videos, or is this just mumbo jumbo? I can find that by Googling. Please comment below. If you want to start a company here, I would recommend you to make it a try here in the world's biggest consumption market. This city is crazy, this country is just amazing. I would suggest you to try this out. China is difficult, but you can find gold in this country. If you want help with it, you know who to call. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Slaving all day, slaving all night. We work slow days and we work slow nights. Slaving night, works days, works night. Slaving day, slaving night, works days, works night. Slaving